Let's talk more about tonight's breaking news. We're joined by Alison, Tilley, campaign coordinator at Judges Matter. Alison, a very good evening to you. Welcome to the program. So, a historic recommendation by the JSC. Is this the best candidate for the job?
Well, I think one of the things we didn't know going into this process is exactly what that meant. Certainly the JSC at this point is saying to the President that in terms of the interviews and all of the questions that were asked and answered, that they believe that President Maya would make the best Chief Justice, and they've put that recommendation to him. He is still entitled to make his own pick, but at this point, obviously, you know, it's a strong recommendation for President Maya.
And in her interview, Judge President Maya said, yes, she acknowledges the weight of the moment as far as how historic it is to have a woman, firstly, interviewed for the job of Chief Justice, and if she would indeed be appointed, that too would be historic. But she was very clear in that she did not want her suitability for the job to be reduced just to her being a woman.
Exactly, and I think she made the point that constantly being asked, you know, if a woman was a good idea, and are we ready for a woman, and what about a woman Chief Justice? And she said, you know, it's exhausting, and I think many women across the country were really unhappy about some of the questions that were put to her. But you know, the fact is, as the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, she commands significant respect in the legal profession. She's risen to leadership of a really important court, and you know, the recommendation from the JSC will obviously carry a lot of weight.
And what might be the issues then, if she is appointed, that you would think she'd have to prioritize?
Well, I think one of the things that's certainly come up is this question of governance in the judiciary, which is a way of saying that we have a whole lot of different courts, magistrates' courts, high courts, the Constitutional Court, and there's a lot of questions about how exactly they will work together. Should we have an SCA and a Constitutional Court? Should they have the jurisdictions that they do at the moment? Should there be 8 justices as a quorum on the Constitutional Court? Or should it be an uneven number? I mean, these are just some of the questions that need to be dealt with. So it's a really full agenda for anybody coming in, and it really is something that's going to need several years to implement. And of course, that's something that President Maya would have is you know, a number of years in the position.
And there is also, Alison, the issue of friction between the political elite in the country, either through government or the opposition parties, and the judiciary. That, some have said, to some extent, appeared more blatantly, shall we say, in the interviews for the Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, as well as Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo yesterday. Now, they've not been nominated tonight, but the perceptions and the consequences of that are likely also to have to be something that Judge President Maya too would have to navigate, wouldn't it, if she were to be confirmed by the President?
I think she will have, and I think some of them are unfair. I mean, if I were to say to you, are you still an alien? You know, it's a difficult question to answer. You would be, no, I'm not an alien, and you know, then there'd be a whole discussion about something that's completely irrelevant. So I think one of the things that we certainly saw in the interviews is a departure from a discussion about what makes a good Chief Justice and a descent into what the politics of the day are. That's been very concerning, and I think there's a serious argument for the JSC needing reform, certainly more rules, and certainly more rules for the chair in terms of what questions are allowed and disallowed.
And as far as President Ramaphosa, then, who, as we know, in law, has the right still, even though the JSC has made this recommendation, to choose any other of the candidates who turned up for the interviews this week. But what would be the national consequence, I wonder, if he were to go with one of the men, given that there's been such a rallying call around the fact that this is not only a qualified jurist, but also one who would be breaking the glass ceiling, as it were, a woman becoming Chief Justice almost 30 years into our democracy?
I think one of the things that we said going into this process is that we are incredibly lucky to have such a deep panel of jurists to come before the JSC. I think we've seen over 4 days grace under fire. We've seen, real depth in terms of the candidates and their vision for the future. So I don't know that there's a wrong choice here. But certainly the JSC having put forward the first woman Chief Justice, if the President made that pick, that would certainly be groundbreaking.
Alison Tilley, good to speak to you. Alison is campaign coordinator at Judges Matter. Thank you for your time.